For the last year, talk of the Chinese yuan becoming a major reserve currency has dominated headlines across the world. This observation became even more acute when President Trump pulled the USA out of the JCPOA agreement, otherwise known as the Iran nuclear deal, in May. Going beyond these headlines and into the thick of things, use of the renminbi in an international context is certainly beginning to expand to a point beyond hype. According to data from the IMF, Chinese yuan as a share of world allocated reserves saw the largest change among all major currencies, as its share doubled from nearly 1.1% in the last quarter of 2016 to 1.84% in the second quarter of 2018. While China's position as a major reserve currency is still relatively modest at this point in time, especially when compared to that of the USA, whose share of global allocated reserves sat at a whopping 62% in the second quarter of 2018, we must not let this overshadow the fact that China may be on an ascendant rise to the top, especially since current growth rates suggest that the Chinese yuan as a share of world allocated reserves may overtake other currencies such as the Canadian dollar and even the pound sterling and the Japanese yen over the next couple years. But for as much attention that is paid to predictions of a petro-yuan, there is an equal amount diverted from other, arguably more substantive contenders for successfully internationalizing the yuan, which we'll talk about more in a moment. But before we get into anything else, it must first be acknowledged that to some degree, an alternative currency to the US dollar does already exist, and has done so for nearly 20 years. We are, of course, talking about the euro. Established in 2002, the euro marks as the national currency for the 19-strong member eurozone, a monetary union where all member states agree to use the euro as their main currency and sole legal tender. The eurozone had a nominal GDP of over $14 trillion in 2017, not to mention that it also currently dwarfs the renminbi when it comes to international use. Perhaps more importantly, it would seem as if the euro has a lot more going for it as a competitor reserve currency to the US dollar, because on paper it would seem to tick a lot more of the boxes in respect to monetary policy. In order for a currency to position itself as a serious contender for the title of international reserve currency, institutional investors and trading nations need to know that they're able to invest and withdraw their money from a country without much by way of capital restrictions. It also helps to have the central bank responsible for managing and issuing said currency to operate a monetary policy that's independent of the central government, as investors believe that this brings more certainty and predictability to the currency in question. So at present, it looks as if the euro, compared to the Chinese yuan, more closely meets this criteria, which probably explains why its share of world allocated reserves is already so much bigger than that of the Chinese yuan, with it possibly holding onto this lead for at least the next few decades, unless China decides to make some tough choices concerning its monetary policy. With all that said, political and economic uncertainty has been constantly plaguing the Eurozone since the onset of the financial crisis, and it seems to only be getting worse. Faced with a sizable wave of migrants from outside of its borders, along with the rise of far-right populist politics across the region in response to this, multiple demographic changes also lie waiting further along the road, and all of these combine to pose quite the threat to the stability and peace experienced by the continent for most of the 21st and 20th centuries. China, on the other hand, is seething with growth and development, and as a single nation may be better primed for stability when measured against the Eurozone, which is, in all honesty, a collection of many different nations, each with their own cultures, different languages and economic characteristics, that attempts to govern their economies through one single currency and monetary union. So don't get us wrong, even though the euro does have a lot going for it in terms of monetary policy, that still doesn't ignore the fact that its share of global allocated reserves has actually been on the decline since 2008, while the uncertainty associated with Europe as a continent may mean that at some point in time, the euro may no longer even exist in its current form, if at all. China can always make changes to its national monetary policy. What matters is that its foundation is strong, and I think it's safe to say that China has its best years ahead of it, while Europe, on the other hand, seems to have its best years behind it. Thanks for watching, guys. We hope you enjoyed the vid. If you want to check out more quality content from us, then be sure to subscribe, turn on your notifications, and like and share this video. Thank you.